The fastest FAISS index can be the worst choice in your RAG stack, because speed that drops the right document is just expensive failure.
Exactly. Choosing a FAISS index is not about chasing the coolest algorithm. It is about matching your data size, memory budget, and recall target to the kind of latency your product can survive.
So this is not which index is best. It is what kind of miss can your system afford.
Right. In RAG, retrieval errors do not look like retrieval errors. They look like bad answers, weak citations, or hallucinations that make the generator take the blame.
Give me the first cut. If I am building retrieval today, what are the main decision factors?
4 things: how many vectors you have, how much RAM or GPU memory you can spend, how much latency you can tolerate per query, and how much recall you need before answer quality starts to break.
Let's make that concrete. Say I have 50,000 chunks for an internal docs assistant. What changes?
At that size, flat is often a serious option. FAISS Index Flat L2 or Index Flat IP gives exact search. Simple, predictable, no training step, and fewer hidden knobs. If your queries are not insanely high volume, exact search can save you from tuning pain.
That sounds almost too boring. Why not jump straight to IVF or HNSW and look more sophisticated?
Because sophistication has a cost. Approximate indexes add tuning, training, and failure modes. On a small dataset, the complexity tax can be bigger than the speed benefit. The winner is the system that ships reliable retrieval, not the one with the fanciest acronym.
So, small data can reward boring choices. When does that stop being true?
Usually, when brute force starts hurting either memory bandwidth or query latency at your real traffic level. Think millions of vectors, larger embedding dimensions, tighter latency budgets, or multi-tenant workloads, where every millisecond compounds.
Let's do a bigger scenario. Say 5 million embeddings, dimension 1536, and I need answers fast enough for chat.
Now, memory becomes strategic. 5 million by 1536 in float 32 is huge before index overhead. Flat may be exact, but it can become expensive in RAM and slow at scale. This is where IVF, HNSW, or product quantization enter the conversation.
Break those apart without the benchmark theater.
IVF, inverted file, narrow search to a subset of clusters. It cuts latency, but if your nearest neighbors land in clusters you did not probe, recall drops. HNSW builds a graph and often gives strong recall latency trade-offs, but memory overhead can be significant. Product quantization shrinks vectors aggressively, which helps memory a lot, but compression can distort distances and hurt retrieval quality.
So, the real knife fight is latency versus recall, with memory sitting there deciding who even gets in the ring.
That is a good way to put it. In RAG, shaving 20 milliseconds is useless if top K no longer contains the chunk that answers the question. Retrieval is upstream of everything. A bad miss can waste generation tokens, user trust, and debugging time.
Give me a practical example of that trade-off going wrong.
Imagine a support bot over policy documents. You switch from flat to IVF with aggressive settings because P95 latency is high. Queries get faster, but recall slips just enough that edge case refund rules fall out of top K. The model now answers confidently from similar but outdated policy text. Your dashboard says latency improved. Your customers experience a policy failure.
That is the dangerous part. The system looks healthier while becoming less correct.
Exactly. Approximate retrieval can fail quietly. That is why index choice should be tied to evaluation on answer quality and retrieval recall, not just query speed.
Let's hit memory directly, because people underestimate it. What should they calculate first?
Start with raw vector storage. Number of vectors times dimension times bytes per value. Float 32 is 4 bytes. Then add index overhead, metadata, and the reality that HNSW and some structures need a lot more than raw vectors alone. If memory is tight, compression methods like PQ can make the difference between fitting in RAM and paging yourself into disaster.
But compression is not free. It buys memory by selling off precision.
Right. And the question is whether your embedding space can tolerate that loss. Dense, semantically similar corpora may degrade differently from highly technical corpora, where tiny distinctions matter. A legal or code-heavy knowledge base can punish coarse quantization harder than a general FAQ set.
So there is no universal ranking. The same index can be smart in one corpus and reckless in another.
Yes, for a few 100,000 vectors, HNSW might give a great balance if you can afford memory. For very large datasets under memory pressure, IVF plus PQ might be the only practical path. For smaller corpora or high-stakes accuracy, flat can still be the right call.
If you had to give a selection path, not a one-size-fits-all answer, what would it be?
Start with flat as your baseline whenever it is feasible. Measure recall at end-to-end answer quality. If latency or cost fails, try HNSW when memory is available and strong recall matters. Try IVF when you need more control over speed at scale. Add PQ when memory is the constraint that dominates everything else. Then, tune by comparing what your users actually lose when recall drops.
And the strategic consequence here is huge. Teams that choose the wrong index are not just slower, they can be confidently wrong.
Exactly. The best FAISS index is the one whose trade-offs you can explain, measure, and live with under real load. In RAG, retrieval is policy, and your index decides what reality the model gets to see.